The ultimatum. The message arrived during the midnight cycle, broadcasting across every human colony simultaneously. Commander Sarah Way was reviewing supply reports aboard Unity Prime when the station's communication array lit up with priority alerts. Every screen in the command center switched to the same transmission, showing the imposing figure of War Marshal Corvin of the Varkan Dominion. The Varkan stood nearly 8 feet tall, his obsidian scales reflecting the harsh lighting of his war vessel. His forearms were crossed in a gesture of absolute authority, and his triple-set eyes gleamed with the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. Behind him, ranks of Varkan warriors stood in perfect formation, each one a testament to centuries of military supremacy. Sarah straightened in her chair, her expression calm as she watched the pre-recorded message play. Around her, the command staff of Unity Prime fell silent, their faces showing various degrees of concern. But Sarah remained still, her hands folded quietly on the armrest, her breathing steady and controlled. War Marshal Corvin's voice rumbled through the speakers, deep and resonant, carrying the weight of 600 years of unchallenged dominion. The Varkans had conquered 83 species across the known galaxy. Their military doctrine was simple and brutally effective. They identified younger civilizations, delivered ultimatums, and absorbed new territories into their empire. Resistance was met with overwhelming force. Compliance was rewarded with survival. The demands were specific. Humanity would surrender control of its 6 outer colonies. Earth and the inner worlds would pay annual tribute consisting of refined metals, technological patents, and agricultural products. Human vessels would be restricted from 12 designated sectors. Military forces would be reduced to defensive capabilities only. The Varkan Dominion would establish monitoring stations in human space to ensure compliance. Humanity had 72 hours to respond. The message ended with Corvin's final statement, delivered with the certainty of someone who had never received any answer but submission. The human leadership would meet with Varkan representatives aboard the neutral station Crossroads to formalize their surrender. Failure to comply would result in immediate military action. The screen went dark. For several seconds, the command center remained silent. Then the controlled chaos of a crisis response began. Officers moved to their stations, pulling up data streams and opening communication channels to Earth Command. Status reports scrolled across displays showing the positions of human ships and the locations of Varkan fleet movements. Sarah stood slowly, her movements deliberate and unhurried. She was 47 years old, with silver threading through her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of decades in space. She had served on colony ships, exploration vessels, and now commanded humanity's primary diplomatic station. She had seen humanity grow from a single world to a network of 15 colonies spanning 40 light-years. Lieutenant Marcus Chen approached her station, his tablet showing preliminary analysis. He was young, barely 30, but had proven himself exceptional at tactical assessment. His family had been among the first colonists on New Terra, and he understood what was at stake better than most. Commander, we have confirmation that the message was received across all human territories, Marcus reported. Earth Command is convening an emergency session. They want your initial assessment within the hour. Sarah nodded, her eyes still on the now dark main screen. What do we know about the Varkans? Pulling files now, Marcus replied, his fingers moving across the tablet. The Varkan Dominion has existed for approximately 600 years. They emerged from a high-gravity world in the outer spiral. Their species evolved as apex predators in an environment filled with megafauna. They're stronger and faster than humans, with natural armor plating and redundant organ systems that make them incredibly difficult to kill. Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined them, the station's xenobiologist carrying her own data compilation. She was a compact woman with sharp eyes and an intensity that made her seem larger than her physical size. She had spent the last 5 years studying alien species encountered by humanity's expansion, always preparing for the day when that knowledge would be needed. Their psychology is equally important, Elena added. Varkan culture is built around the concept of hierarchical dominance. Strength determines status. They respect power and view negotiation from weaker parties as an admission of inferiority. Every species they've encountered has either submitted immediately or been crushed within months. How many species have tried to resist? Sarah asked. 12, Elena replied. None successfully. The Varkans employ overwhelming force doctrines. They don't negotiate during conflicts. They demonstrate superior military capability, occupy key territories, and force submission through sustained pressure. The longest resistance lasted 7 months before collapse. Sarah walked to the observation window looking out at the stars. Earth hung in the distance, a blue and white sphere that represented humanity's origin and heart. Around it, orbital stations glittered like jewels, industrial platforms and defensive installations that had been built over the past century. Humanity had come so far in such a short time. "What's the Galactic Council's response?" Sarah asked. Marcus pulled up the diplomatic feeds. "They're urging immediate compliance. The council representative from the Thalen Collective sent a formal message recommending we accept Varkan terms. They cite the historical precedent and suggest that resistance would be futile and costly. The council has never intervened in Varkan expansion," Elena noted. "They view it as inevitable. Better to accept terms and maintain some autonomy than face total conquest." Sarah turned from the window, her expression thoughtful. "Schedule a staff meeting in 1 hour. I want every department head present. Get me everything we have on Varkan military tactics, their fleet compositions, their supply lines, their communication protocols. I want to know how they think, how they fight, and most importantly, what they expect from us." "Commander," Marcus said carefully, "Earth Command will likely recommend compliance. The math is straightforward. The Varkans have 10,000 warships. We have maybe 400 vessels that could be classified as military capable. They have 800 worlds. We have 15. They have 600 years of continuous military operation. We've been in space for less than 150 years. Sarah met his eyes steadily. "Math is important, Marcus. But it's not everything. Humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth because we were the strongest or fastest. We became dominant because we learned to think differently than our competitors." Dr. Rodriguez smiled slightly, recognizing the reference. "Persistence hunting." "Exactly," Sarah nodded. "Our ancestors on Earth learned that you don't need to be faster than your prey if you're more patient. You don't need to be stronger if you're smarter about when and where you engage. You track, you learn, you wait for the right moment." "The Varkans aren't prey," Marcus pointed out. "No," Sarah agreed. "They're not. But they're predators who have been hunting prey for 600 years. Species that submitted without real resistance. Species that accepted the inevitable because the alternative seemed impossible. They've forgotten what it's like to face another predator." She moved back to her command chair, pulling up communication interfaces. "Send a response to War Marshal Corvin. Use the formal diplomatic protocols. Thank him for his clear communication. Express our interest in meeting at the neutral station as he suggested.
Indicate that humanity wishes to understand the full scope of the proposal before responding. That's all?"
Marcus asked. "That's all," Sarah confirmed. "Keep it polite, professional, and calm. Don't indicate acceptance or rejection. Simply acknowledge receipt and confirm the meeting." Elena leaned forward. "You're buying time." "I'm establishing a pattern," Sarah corrected. "The Varkans expect fear. They expect begging or immediate capitulation. I want them confused. I want them wondering why we're not behaving the way their previous 83 conquests behaved." The response was drafted and sent within minutes. Sarah watched the communication pulse out into space, traveling toward the Varkan fleet that hung at the edge of human territory. The fleet was substantial, 40 warships according to sensor data, each one massive and bristling with weaponry. It was a demonstration of force, a reminder of what awaited if humanity chose resistance. The staff meeting convened in the main conference room. Department heads filed in, each bringing their expertise and concerns. Military Liaison Captain James Park represented Earth Defense Forces. Chief Engineer Thomas Walsh brought technical assessments of Varkan ship capabilities. Intelligence Officer Rebecca Stone carried analysis of Varkan expansion patterns. Cultural Specialist Dr. Yuki Tanaka provided insights into Varkan's social structure. Sarah stood at the head of the table, waiting until everyone was settled. "We have 72 hours to respond to the Varkan ultimatum. Earth Command will make the final decision, but they're looking to us for recommendations. I want options, and I want them grounded in reality, not wishful thinking." Captain Park spoke first. "From a purely military standpoint, direct engagement would be catastrophic. Varkan warships outmass ours 3-1. Their weapons technology is more advanced. Their armor is superior. In a straight fight, we lose badly and quickly." "What if it's not a straight fight?" Sarah asked. The question hung in the air. Captain Park frowned, considering. Explain. The Varkans expect traditional warfare, Sarah said. Fleet engagements, territorial control, occupation. That's how they've always operated. What if we don't give them traditional warfare? Thomas Walsh, the engineer, caught on first. Asymmetric warfare. We don't meet them in open space. We make them chase us through territory we know better than they do. We'd still lose, Park said, but his tone was less certain now. Eventually. Maybe, Sarah acknowledged. Or maybe they decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Maybe they realize that conquering us would cost more than they're willing to pay. Rebecca Stone, the intelligence officer, pulled up data on her tablet. I've been analyzing Varkan expansion patterns over the past 600 years. They're methodical, almost cautious. They never overextend. They consolidate holdings before moving forward. They avoid conflicts that might drag on or prove too costly. Because they don't need to take risks, Dr. Tanaka added. Every species they've encountered has submitted. Why would they change tactics when their current approach has a 100% success rate? Sarah nodded slowly. Which means their doctrine is optimized for fighting prey, not predators. They've built an entire military culture around intimidation and overwhelming initial force because that's always worked. You're suggesting we break their pattern, Park said, understanding dawning. We show them that intimidation doesn't work on us. More than that, Sarah replied. We show them that we're not prey. We're something different. Something they haven't encountered before. Elena Rodriguez spoke up. There's a concept in evolutionary biology called niche differentiation. When two predator species occupy the same territory, they survive by hunting differently. Lions hunt in coordinated prides. Leopards hunt alone and drag prey into trees. Cheetahs rely on speed. Hyenas use endurance and numbers. Each is successful because they don't compete directly. The Varkans are lions, Marcus said, following the metaphor. Big, powerful, coordinated pack hunters. And humans? Sarah asked. Humans are persistence hunters, Elena said. We track our prey for days. We coordinate over vast distances. We use tools and strategy. We don't need to win the first engagement. We just need to ensure there's a second engagement and a third and a fourth, until our prey is exhausted and we're still moving forward. Sarah looked around the table at her team. I'm not recommending we go to war. I'm recommending we make them understand that if they force us into war, it won't be the kind of war they're used to winning. Earth Command might not approve this approach, Park warned. Then we'll present it clearly and let them decide, Sarah replied. But we owe them real options, not just surrender. The meeting continued for 2 hours, with each department contributing analysis and proposals. By the end, they had assembled a comprehensive briefing that would go to Earth Command. The recommendation was unconventional, possibly dangerous, but it offered something that immediate surrender did not. It offered the possibility that humanity could remain free. As the staff dispersed to their duties, Marcus lingered behind. Commander, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really think we can win against the Varkans? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. Winning and surviving aren't always the same thing, Marcus. Our ancestors didn't win against every predator they faced on Earth. Sometimes they survived by being too difficult to catch. Sometimes they survived by making the hunt more costly than the meal was worth. Sometimes they survived by simply refusing to quit until the other predator decided to find easier prey. She looked out the viewport again at the stars and the distant Earth. The Varkans have conquered 83 species. They have a perfect record. But perfect records create blind spots. They've forgotten that not every species responds to threats the same way. They've forgotten that predators come in many forms. And you think that's enough? I think it's a place to start, Sarah said. The Varkans are coming to Crossroads Station expecting us to surrender. Instead, we're going to sit down with them, look them in the eye, and have a conversation. We're going to be polite, professional, and completely calm. And while we're doing that, we're going to learn everything we can about them. She turned to face her young officer. Because that's what humans do, Marcus. We learn. We adapt. We find weaknesses, and we never ever stop moving forward. The response from War Marshal Corvin arrived 6 hours later. He had accepted humanity's request for a meeting at Crossroads Station. He would bring his senior command staff. The meeting would take place in 48 hours. His message was brief and carried a tone of satisfaction. The Varkans believed humanity was moving toward inevitable surrender. Sarah read the message and smiled slightly. The Varkans thought they were coming to accept submission. What they didn't realize was that they were coming to be studied, analyzed, and assessed. They were coming to be hunted politely and patiently by a species that had spent 200,000 years perfecting the art of the long pursuit. The galaxy thought it understood humans. The Varkans thought they understood warfare. In 48 hours, both were about to learn something new. The Hunt Begins Crossroads Station hung in neutral space, equidistant from human and Varkan territories. The structure was ancient by galactic standards, built 400 years ago as a meeting ground for species who needed neutral territory for sensitive negotiations. Its design was deliberately simple, a sphere of reinforced metal with minimal weapons and maximum sensor coverage. Treaties and council protocols governed its use, prohibiting violence and guaranteeing safe passage for all parties. Commander Sarah, we arrived 12 hours before the scheduled meeting, her diplomatic vessel Aurora docking smoothly with the station's receiving port. She brought a team of 8 specialists, each chosen for specific skills that had nothing to do with traditional diplomacy. Lieutenant Marcus Chen handled tactical analysis. Dr. Elena Rodriguez provided xenobiological expertise. Captain James Park served as military liaison. Rebecca Stone brought intelligence-gathering capabilities. Thomas Walsh assessed technical systems. Dr. Yuki Tanaka analyzed cultural patterns. Lieutenant Sarah Kim managed communications. And finally, Commander David Foster led security operations. The team assembled in their assigned conference section, a large room with transparent walls looking out into space. The room contained a circular table designed to accommodate multiple species anatomies, environmental controls that could adjust for varying atmospheric preferences and translation systems capable of handling hundreds of languages. It was comfortable, neutral, and perfectly designed for observation. Sarah stood at the viewport, watching the distant stars while her team set up their equipment. They worked with quiet efficiency, each person moving through practiced routines. Marcus established secure communication links back to Unity Prime and Earth Command. Elena reviewed Varkan biological data one more time. Rebecca activated passive monitoring systems that would record every aspect of the upcoming meeting. Thomas conducted a thorough scan of the station's systems, mapping power flows and communication networks. The station is clean, Thomas reported after an hour of scanning. No signs of tampering or surveillance beyond the standard monitoring systems. Power distribution is normal. Life support is functioning within expected parameters. Communication arrays are operating on standard protocols. How secure are those communication arrays? Sarah asked. Thomas smiled slightly. They're encrypted using Council standard protocols, which means they're secure against most species, but potentially vulnerable to anyone with advanced decryption capabilities and enough processing power. How much processing power? More than most species carry on diplomatic vessels, Thomas replied, but within the capabilities of our quantum arrays back on Unity Prime. Sarah nodded, understanding the implication. So if someone were monitoring Varkan communications during this meeting, theoretically, those communications might be intercepted and analyzed. Theoretically, Thomas agreed, his expression neutral. Though of course such monitoring would be a violation of Council protocols. Of course, Sarah said, we would never violate protocols. But we should be aware that others might not share our scruples. Rebecca Stone looked up from her monitoring station. The Varkan fleet is approaching. They'll be in docking range within 2 hours. I'm reading one heavy cruiser, War Marshal Corvin's flagship. Escort formation of 6 destroyers holding position at the outer marker. Composition of the boarding party? Sarah asked. 12 Varkans, Rebecca replied, scanning the incoming data. War Marshal Corvin, 3 senior commanders, 4 honor guards, 2 technical specialists, and 2 cultural advisors. Standard diplomatic formation for their species. Dr. Tanaka reviewed the same data on her tablet. Interesting. The inclusion of cultural advisors suggests they're taking this meeting more seriously than their initial ultimatum implied. They're preparing for actual discussion, not just accepting surrender. Or they want to understand us better before the occupation begins, Marcus suggested. Either way, it's information, Sarah replied. Elena, what should we expect from their physical presence? The xenobiologist pulled up three-dimensional models of Varkan physiology. They'll dominate the room physically. Average height of 7.5 feet. Dense musculature adapted for high gravity. Natural armor plating that makes them appear even larger. Their body language will emphasize size and strength. They'll position themselves to loom over us, using height advantage to reinforce psychological dominance. How do we counter that? Marcus asked. We don't, Sarah said simply. We acknowledge it, accept it, and proceed as if it doesn't matter. Humans have faced larger predators before. We survived by not playing the intimidation game. We can't win a contest of physical presence, so we don't enter that contest. Captain Park added his perspective. Military assessment suggests they'll study our reactions carefully. Every Varkan commander is trained to read body language and identify fear responses. They're looking for the moment when we break, when someone shows submission. Then we ensure that moment never comes, Sarah replied. Everyone maintains composure. No nervous gestures. No defensive posturing. We treat this like any other diplomatic meeting. Professional, calm, interested. The 2 hours passed quickly. The team continued their preparations, reviewing files and rehearsing possible conversation flows. Sarah had insisted on flexible planning rather than rigid scripts. The Varkans would expect certain responses, and she wanted the freedom to surprise them. When the Varkan vessel docked, the station's sensors registered the event immediately. 12 biosignatures moved through the airlock, each one massive compared to human baselines. The Varkans proceeded directly to the conference section, their heavy footfalls audible even through the station's sound dampening systems. Sarah positioned her team around the circular table, spacing them naturally rather than clustering defensively. Each human appeared relaxed, comfortable, prepared but not anxious. When the door opened and the Varkans entered, not one human flinched. War Marshal Corvin led his delegation into the room. He was massive even by Varkan standards, his obsidian scales polished to a mirror sheen. His forearms moved with controlled precision, each gesture calculated for maximum impact. His triple eyes swept across the humans, analyzing and assessing. Behind him, his commanders spread out in a formation designed to occupy space and assert dominance. Sarah stood and stepped forward, her movement smooth and unhurried. She inclined her head in a gesture of respect, her expression open and friendly. War Marshal Corvin, thank you for meeting with us. I'm Commander Sarah Way. This is my senior staff. We're honored by your presence and appreciate your willingness to discuss the situation. Corvin stared down at the human commander. She was tiny compared to him, barely reaching his mid-torso, yet she met his gaze without fear, without submission, without any of the responses he had seen from 83 previous species. Her voice was warm, genuinely welcoming, as if greeting an honored guest rather than a conqueror. You waste time with pleasantries, Corvin rumbled. We are here to formalize your surrender. Present your acceptance of our terms. We're here to understand your perspective, Sarah replied, her tone remaining pleasant. Please, won't you sit? We've studied Varkan environmental preferences and adjusted the room accordingly. Gravity is set to 1.3 standard. Temperature is 18 degrees. Humidity at 40%. If you need any adjustments, please let us know. The offer caught Corvin off balance. He had expected fear or defiance. Instead, this human was offering hospitality. He glanced at his cultural advisors, who appeared equally uncertain. After a moment, he moved to the table and settled into a reinforced seat designed for his mass. His commanders took positions around the table while his honor guard stood behind him. The human sat across from the Varkans, the circular table eliminating any sense of opposing sides. Sarah folded her hands on the table surface, her posture engaged and attentive. Tell me about Varkan expansion philosophy, Sarah began. I've read the historical records, but I'm curious about your perspective. How does the Dominion decide which species to approach? The question was so unexpected that Corvin actually paused. Every previous negotiation had begun with pleas, offers, or attempts at justification. This human was asking about Varkan's strategic thinking as if conducting an academic interview. One of the cultural advisors, a female named Thara, leaned forward. "You wish to understand our methods?" "Of course," Elena Rodriguez interjected. "Your expansion has been remarkably successful. 83 species integrated over 600 years. That suggests a sophisticated approach to target selection and negotiation strategy. From an anthropological perspective, it's fascinating." Marcus Chen added his observation. "The pattern is consistent. You approach younger species, those with fewer than 50 worlds. You deliver clear ultimatums with reasonable timeframes. You demonstrate military superiority without unnecessary destruction. Each species you've approached has accepted terms within days. It's actually quite efficient." Dr. Tanaka nodded agreement. "The resource calculations are impressive. Each integrated species adds productive capacity to the Dominion. The tribute demands are significant but sustainable. You avoid overexploitation that might trigger rebellion. The system is self-reinforcing." Corvin found himself responding despite his intentions. "The Dominion survives through strength and order. We identify species that would benefit from our protection. We offer integration on terms that preserve their basic autonomy while ensuring galactic stability." "Protection from what?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. "From each other," Corvin replied. "From the chaos of unregulated expansion. From conflicts that would otherwise consume them. The Dominion provides structure, security, and prosperity. And in exchange, you receive tribute and territorial control," Sarah said. "It's a form of empire building, but one with benefits for all parties. I can see why it's been successful." The Varkans were now thoroughly confused. This conversation wasn't following any familiar pattern. The humans weren't begging or protesting. They were analyzing Varkan methods with academic detachment and apparent respect. "You understand our offer, yet you delay acceptance," Corvin stated. "Why?" "Because we want to understand what we're agreeing to," Sarah replied. "Humans have a saying, measure twice, cut once. We prefer to understand situations fully before making commitments." Captain Park spoke up. "We've also been studying your military doctrine, War Marshal. Your fleet tactics are sophisticated. You favor overwhelming initial force demonstrations. You use mobility to control territory. You establish monitoring stations to maintain presence without requiring large occupation forces. It's resource efficient. You analyze our military as if planning resistance," one of Corvin's commanders growled. "We analyze everything," Marcus replied calmly. "It's what humans do. We study, we learn, we understand. Knowledge is valuable regardless of intended application." Rebecca Stone added her perspective. "We've been particularly interested in your communication protocols. The way you coordinate fleet movements across such vast territories is impressive. The encryption systems are sophisticated, though they rely on quantum entanglement for secure channels. Very advanced," Thomas Walsh nodded. "The power generation on your vessels is remarkable too. Fusion cores with redundant systems. Enough output to support both propulsion and weapons arrays simultaneously. We've calculated that your heavy cruisers can maintain full combat operations for approximately 8 standard months before requiring refueling." The Varkan technical specialists exchanged glances. These humans had conducted detailed analysis of Dominion capabilities. The level of detail they possessed suggested access to information that should have been secured. Corvin's scales darkened slightly, a sign of growing agitation. "You have studied us thoroughly." "Of course," Sarah replied. "You delivered an ultimatum that would fundamentally alter humanity's future. We'd be foolish not to understand who we're dealing with, just as I'm sure you've studied us." "We know what we need to know," Corvin said. "Humans are a young species. You have limited territory, limited military strength, limited experience. You are not a threat?" "No," Sarah agreed. "We're not a threat. We're a potential partner or a potential problem. Which one we become depends on how this conversation proceeds." She leaned forward slightly. "War Marshal, I want to share something with you. A piece of human history that might provide context for our perspective." Corvin gestured for her to continue, curious despite himself. 200,000 years ago, humans were not the dominant species on Earth, Sarah began. We shared our world with predators that were faster, stronger, and better armed than we were. Saber-toothed cats that could kill with one bite. Cave bears twice our size. Packs of wolves that hunted with deadly efficiency. By all logical measures, we should have gone extinct. Elena picked up the narrative. But humans survived by hunting differently. We didn't chase prey until it tired. We tracked it for days, Humans can sweat, which allows us to cool our bodies while running. Most animals on Earth cannot. So we would select a target and follow it. The prey would sprint away. We would follow at a steady pace. The prey would rest. We would keep coming. Eventually, after hours or sometimes days, the prey would collapse from exhaustion, and we would simply walk up and make the kill. This is relevant how? One of the Varkon commanders asked. Because it shaped how humans think about challenges, Sarah replied. We don't need to win quickly. We don't need to be stronger or faster. We need to be patient and persistent. We need to outlast our opponents. Dr. Tanaka added, humans call it persistence hunting. It's not just a technique. It's a fundamental aspect of human psychology. When we face overwhelming opposition, we don't surrender. We adapt. We find new approaches. We endure. Marcus displayed data on his tablet, turning it so the Varkans could see. We've been in space for 147 years. In that time, we've established 15 colonies across 40 light years. We've survived colony failures, disease outbreaks, resource shortages, and 3 separate environmental catastrophes. Each time we adapted and continued forward. Impressive survival, Corvin acknowledged. But survival is not military victory. True, Captain Park agreed. But consider this. Humanity has never fought an interstellar war. We have no experience with the kind of fleet engagements you've perfected. In a direct confrontation, we would lose badly. But humans rarely fight direct confrontations when we're outmatched. Rebecca Stone pulled up historical files. Earth history is filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric engagement, economic disruption, information warfare. Humans learned long ago that you don't need to win battles if you can make the war too costly for your opponent to continue. You threaten us? Corvin's voice carried an edge. No, Sarah said firmly. We're explaining our perspective. You've presented us with a choice. Submit or be conquered, but there's actually a third option you haven't considered. Make conquest so difficult, so prolonged, and so costly that you decide we're not worth the effort. She stood, moving to the viewport. Your dominion has existed for 600 years. You've integrated 83 species. Your record is perfect, but perfection creates vulnerability, War Marshal. It creates predictability. You know how to fight species that submit or species that offer token resistance. What you don't know is how to fight species that refuse to engage on your terms. Corvin stood as well, his full height towering over the human commander. You believe you can resist the Dominion? I believe we can make you question whether conquering us is worth what it would cost, Sarah replied, meeting his gaze calmly. I believe we can drag out any conflict for years, perhaps decades. I believe we can make every star system you occupy a source of constant problems. I believe we can ensure that every ship you station in our territory requires support that drains resources from elsewhere in your empire. I believe we can be the prey that refuses to collapse, that keeps running, that forces you to chase us until you're exhausted. The room fell silent. The Varkans stared at this small human who had just outlined a strategy of making herself and her species into a persistent irritation rather than accepting subjugation. You would choose extended conflict over peace? Thara, the cultural advisor, asked. We would choose freedom over subjugation, Elena corrected. Peace can take many forms. We'd prefer peace as equals, as partners. We're offering you that option right now. Work with us instead of conquering us, and if we refuse, Corvin asked, then we make you work for every system, every colony, every resource, Sarah said quietly. We don't threaten you, War Marshal. We're simply explaining that humans are persistent. We endure, we adapt, we never stop moving forward. She returned to the table, her expression becoming warmer again. But we haven't reached that point yet. We're still talking. We're still exploring options. We're still trying to understand each other. What none of the Varkans realized was that while this conversation proceeded, other events were unfolding across their territory. 3 human vessels, small and equipped with advanced stealth systems, had penetrated Varkan space 48 hours earlier. They moved silently through systems the Dominion had considered secure, approaching targets that had been carefully selected. At Outpost Talon, a military coordination facility responsible for managing fleet movements across 6 sectors, a technical anomaly occurred. Power systems fluctuated inexplicably. Communication arrays developed strange interference patterns. Security systems registered phantom contacts that vanished when investigated. The Varkan personnel responded with practiced efficiency, moving to manual overrides and backup systems. But when the lights came back on, they discovered a message displaying across every screen in the facility. Greetings from humanity. We've been here for 2 days. Your security protocols need updating. No one was harmed. Consider this a demonstration of capability. Please continue with your duties. At the same moment, at Supply Station Meridian, which serviced the Varkan fleet operating near human territory, a similar event occurred. Systems locked, then unlocked. A human specialist, Commander Lisa Park, revealed herself in the main operations center. She stood calmly, surrounded by confused and angry Varkan logistics officers. Good morning. I've been here since your last shift change. Your supply manifests are fascinating reading. I've learned a lot about Varkan fleet support requirements. Don't worry, nothing has been sabotaged. But I could have sabotaged everything. That's the point. The third human vessel took a more dramatic approach. It appeared in orbit above a secondary Varkan military world, a planet responsible for training and equipping Dominion forces. The ship, named Explorer, was unarmed and tiny compared to the orbital defense platforms that immediately locked weapons onto it. Commander David Foster broadcast on all frequencies. This is Commander David Foster of the human vessel Explorer. We come in peace. We're here to demonstrate something important. This star system was supposed to be secret. Your defensive positions were supposed to be hidden. We found everything. We've been mapping your installations for 3 weeks. We could have struck anywhere, but we chose to introduce ourselves politely instead. He transmitted data packages showing detailed scans of every military installation in the system, proof that human intelligence capabilities had penetrated what the Varkans considered secure space. We're leaving now, Foster continued. No weapons will be fired. No damage will be done. But we wanted you to understand that if this becomes a war, it won't be the kind of war you're used to fighting. Humans don't meet superior forces in open combat. We find what you want to protect and we show you that your protections aren't sufficient. Then we offer you the choice of continuing to fight or finding a better solution. The Explorer jumped to faster-than-light travel before the Varkan defenses could coordinate a response. Back at Crossroads Station, the meeting continued. Corvin received urgent communications from his command network, messages reporting the human infiltrations and demonstrations. His expression darkened as he processed the information. These humans had penetrated Dominion security while engaging in seemingly friendly conversation. Sarah watched him receive the news, her expression sympathetic but not apologetic. You're getting reports, aren't you? About human activities in your territory. Corvin's scales flushed dark with anger. You violate our space while pretending to negotiate? We demonstrate capability while genuinely offering alternatives, Sarah corrected. War Marshal, we could have destroyed those facilities. We could have killed your personnel. We could have created chaos across your supply networks. We did none of those things. We revealed ourselves politely, explained what we had done, and left without causing harm. Why? Corvin demanded. Because we wanted you to understand what kind of species you're dealing with, Sarah replied. Humans can be subtle. We can infiltrate, gather intelligence, and strike with precision, but we prefer not to. We prefer to talk, to negotiate, to find solutions that benefit everyone. She leaned forward, her voice becoming earnest. You've conquered 83 species because they were prey. They submitted because they couldn't imagine winning. But humans aren't prey, War Marshal. We're predators too, just a different kind. We don't dominate through strength. We succeed through patience, adaptability, and refusal to quit. Marcus added, Your perfect record is based on fighting species that thought like prey. What happens when you face species that think like hunters? Species that study you while you're studying them? Species that prepare and position themselves before you realize you're being maneuvered? Rebecca Stone displayed analysis on the main screens. Oui,